Please do not adjust your sets. This is not an aberration. I've not turned into Mufti Yusuf Akuri that you're so used to, but unfortunately he has today put me in the hot seat to say, Iqbal bhai, please do the show on my behalf. He is here with me. Today we are going to be talking to somebody that I've had a huge respect for, a person I've known for a very long time, a man who has commanded respect not just in this community but across the world as well, for whom, as I say, I have a huge respect. We're going to talk about issues that confront Muslim businesses, Muslim institutions, Muslim communities, both at the local and economic level as well as the community level. So friends, I have with me today Amjad Pervez, a man who is well known in this community in the West Yorkshire area, who has many tentacles around many institutional organizations, both formal and informal as well. He's a non-executive director of the local NHS Trust. He is chair of one of the free schools that has been recently established, which has spent £4 million investment recently.
Yeah, Rainbow School.
Rainbow School. He's a member. He's been a former member of the LEPS Skills and Employment Skills project as well. And I will let him talk about himself. What I want to talk to Amjad about today is about Muslim businesses. Now, Mufti and I have spoken about this before, that in this particular area, West Yorkshire, Bradford has come through some very difficult and challenging times, and everything we read in the media and in the press usually is negative. And one of the fundamental issues that I've been talking about over the past is that when we've seen reports like the Case Review and others, they don't talk about the positive contribution that Muslims make. So today I hope we're going to change that balance. So I've got Amjad here. Amjad is a business person who started here very young. He was one of the very first Asian people to graduate from the old Huddersfield Polytechnic, which is now one of the most successful universities in the country. So friends, I've got Amjad here. Assalamu alaikum, Amjad Sahab. Welcome.
Walaikum assalam.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be with you today. And I would just want you to share your journey up to now, when you came to this country, when you went through the education system, and your successful business. I mean, you run two local massive businesses which employs over 300 people locally.
Over 300 people here, and across the globe there'll be thousands through our logistics supply chain. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and to be here to converse with you and your viewers. So you asked me, how did the journey begin? My father was in the British Indian Army, like most people. I saw active service in Burma, and after the war, obviously because of partition, our economy wasn't developed, both of India and Pakistan, and the economy of UK and particularly its infrastructure was decimated. But the demand globally grew in terms of manufactured goods. So to regenerate the UK economy, they needed cheap skilled labour. Hence, the ex-soldiers who were part of the Indian Army were first called over. So my father's generation in the 50s came over. So it wasn't that they forced themselves onto British society. There was a definite need.
They were invited over.
They were absolutely invited.
They were needed.
And they were welcomed. And they played an absolute significant role in turning the economies of this country around. And I think people forget. And then you moved on to Bradford and how things are portrayed negatively. But you see, people forget that during the Industrial Revolution, London played a very, very minor role. It was the northern cities of Bradford, Huddersfield, Dewsbury, Manchester, right? Places like that were the engines of innovation. So if you talk about Lister, his concept of the model village, education system, sanitation, and the cooperative movement that started. So there are a lot of good stuff that happened in the north. But what happened, I think, during the First World War and the Second World War, the war effort needed centralization. So London took control. But that
the seat of government was
no,
there,
absolutely.
Why,
But what happened, right, after the war, rather than actually devolving that power back to these great cities, right, very greedily, London kept its kind of control on that. Right?
Centralized everything. Yeah.
Absolutely centralized.
I think that is a very actually you raise a very fundamental point, because one of the things that we've spoken about, and I've got Mufti Yusuf Sah with me as well. I don't know why he's sitting in the chair that I normally occupy, but he thinks it's much more comfortable than the chair that he occupies. But coming back to that very point, as I say, Bradford has had some very negative publicity. And one of the things in Bradford particularly, and Leeds and surrounding areas like Huddersfield, Muslim businesses are still the drivers of a huge component, percentage of the economy of this area. And I think that is something that institutional organizations have not really recognized. And I mean, I talk to people in the LEP, and if you look at the engagement between the LEP and Asian businesses and Muslim businesses, it's very minimal. So, where do you see Muslim businesses making an impact on not just on a local level, but on a strategic level? Because the Northern Powerhouse has huge potential.
Okay.
And you are on the board of Bradford Forward.
Yeah.
And you have been. You were chair of ATL for God knows how many
14 years. Yeah.
You're president of the Yorkshire Asian Business Association. You are now involved in strategic planning of the economy of the next 20, 30 years of this region.
I think what we've got to do is look at where we were, what went wrong, and where we need to move forward. So that's the strategic bit. So Bradford and cities like Bradford, probably 50 years ago, 60 years ago, knew exactly what their competitive advantage was. So for Bradford, it was cheap soft water, it was cheap local wool, and wool coming from empire countries. We had cheap immigrant labour coming in. But more importantly, right, the empire countries which we occupied, which liberated after 1947, around about that time, were an easy market entry for us. We didn't have any competition. But unfortunately, I think the British industrialists got lazy after the war. Once the empire countries became independent, there is always, when you become independent, you want to tell the other nation, right, that occupied you that, look, we're just as good, you kept us low. So what happened? They invested in the latest technology. They educate. So if you remember in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, there was a wave of Turkish undergraduates. The Malaysians came over, the Indians came over, right? So I mean, when you were going there, so what happened? So they learned, they realized the education, but education that is fit for purpose in terms of what they needed for their economies. Whereas we kept the old kit, we kept the old education system, and over time after the 70s, and then obviously the Thatcher government that absolutely decimated the industrial heritage of the North.
I mean, that's one perspective, yes.
I
mean, I have to balance it out, but that's one perspective, yes.
Right.
I agree with you.
So I think your challenge that Asian businesses have made a huge contribution, I think I absolutely agree. But if you look at it logically, right, and if you throw a cold bucket of water over yourself and say, we've been here for nearly 60, 70, 80 years. We've been in employment and self-employment for several of these, so over 50 years. So in the last 50 years, if you look at Yorkshire, how many businesses actually are in the top 100 or top 1,000? Not many, right? So there's this lot of noise that, we've got a lot of Asian businesses. But what I would ask you is, what is the quality of those businesses? And more importantly, because I was involved in business development, business support, through the LEP, through Business Link, Yorkshire Forward. And what we find is that Asian businesses generally, right, get to a certain level.
Yes.
Right? And then they hit
this.
Then they get hit this glass ceiling. And to be honest with you, this is not just
glass ceiling that they don't get access to the procurement market?
No.
Or is it because
it's very complicated?
Yeah, go on.
It's very complicated. And I actually wrote a thesis on that for the LEP, and that is now in Lord Young's report, Business for All, and I call it the ecosystem of enterprise. how you actually...
Which I want to talk to you about as well at some stage.
So basically what happens, when we started C-Fresh, it was my brothers and myself, right, the family, putting everything together. So when you
worked all hours of the day?
Yeah, every day. Because you need to put the dinner on the table, you need to pay your bills, and you don't do anything. But then probably around about 3 years, when you establish the brand, you've got regular customers, right, then like a child, when a child grows up, they need a different type of mentoring, they need a different type of education, they need different skill sets, they need a different type of parenting. Business is exactly like that. It's a living entity that's growing. So at that level, at 3-year-old, when you've established that company, right, now it needs something else. It needs specialists. It needs a finance director, it needs a marketing director, it needs a technology specialist, right? But it needs succession planning. And more than that, it needs a development strategy. What that means, are you in a market that is growing or is it diminishing? And within that market, where do you place yourself? Are you going to become the Aldi of this world or the Harvey Nicks of this world? Now, if you decide that you want to be at the top of the tree, then the policies and the procedures, right, and the strategic...
Let me concur with you. At the moment, I'm a business consultant.
Okay.
And I work with a lot of Asian businesses in particular, in my area, which is bedding industry, and some non-bedding industry. And virtually one business is £28 million a year.
Yeah.
Right? They're not a small business, employing 150 people. When I've been to these businesses and I've spoken to them and I say, do you have a business plan? They look at me and say, what is a business plan?
Yeah.
So it actually echoes something that you just said.
But more than
that,
I'm just going to come in there.
Okay.
This is something that, that will be well appealing to our younger audience and making sense and looking back at the struggles Amjad Bhai has gone through. However, how do you then, translate that to our big market leaders as such currently in businesses to go that level? It's from kindergarten to nursery to primary to high school.
That's where my friend, this ecosystem of enterprise comes in. When you develop an individual, right, you need to have a long-term plan. So how do you actually, so in terms of an individual, so what are their skill sets? What are they naturally good at? Is it maths? Is it science? Is it arts? Is it history? Is it geography? So what are their likings? And you build on that. And you put the education system around that. It's about parenting. It's what kind of schools you send them to, what kind of societies they join in, and what kind of extracurricular activity. So it's not magic.
It's all the support network.
So all the support network. Now, for a business, it's exactly the same thing. So if you've got a set of people from a family, so their value system is going to be pretty much similar. Their skill sets are going to be pretty much similar. But you see, what we forget is that the businesses are living entities. What it requires as it grows is different skill sets. And because of this family kind of cooperative ethos that we have, bringing somebody in from the outside, right, becomes a major obstacle.
Is that a cultural thing?
No, it's not a culture. It's not just an Asian thing. And I think I'm going to say something. I'm going to be provocative, and
Please,
because
because be honest.
Right, I think there are certain practices that happen within businesses which I call the informal economy. Right, everybody does it. Right, whether you're big, small, right. Some call it evasion, some call it avoidance, some call it aggressive avoidance, right? Or they call it Panama leaks papers, and Paradise Papers. Okay. So the richest of the rich do it. Some are legal, some are on the border of legal, right? So because we really don't have access to the top lawyers, top management accountants, top succession policy makers, because they're expensive, we think they're too expensive. But what I say is, if you actually, it's like they're saying, well, why should we spend so much on education? And the old saying goes, well, wait till the bill for ignorance comes in, right? In terms of,
love that.
But so in terms of what's happening in social dysfunctionality and what you pay in crime and that kind of stuff. So the same thing happens in business. So if you do not put the right infrastructure and strategic planning and business modeling in place, unfortunately, it doesn't matter. So there's the old saying, mehnat karo.
So can I just stop you there? Can I just say, okay, taking everything you've said, we know that within this area, we have phenomenal businesses like yours. We've got, Regal, for example, PLC. You've got Agra, Aslam, he employs over nearly 400 people. And there are many other businesses like that. Why are these businesses, I mean, Bombay Stores is celebrating 50 years of existence, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, why is it these business people, leaders like yourselves, are very few when it comes to the strategic development, regeneration issues where they can make an input. So, I mean, apart from yourself, I don't know many people who are involved at that strategic level.
Well, let me be honest.
Just come in there.
You say apart from yourself. Well, let me tell you the pains of what we needed to go through. So when we obviously started from Little Orton Lane, we had a corner shop. We developed into Sea Fresh, which was food services, right? And I had my brothers were with me. We brought on more people, but the key decision makers were the family members. We got to a stage where I realized that skill set wasn't enough.
Yes.
Right. Who do you say in the family, right, that you are no longer fit to be somebody who's going to do the marketing? You're no longer fit to do HR, right? Now, if it's an older brother, or God forbid if it's your father, right, it becomes like walking on eggshells, right? So the way that you've got to do it, and the way we came over that, was we brought somebody in from outside who did the consultancy. Right. Now, we paid a lot of money for that. So Business Link came in, they did a consultancy, they did a due diligence, and they said, look, these are the problem areas you've got. Right? In your organization, you're all good deal makers, you're good salespeople, right? You're good with people and you're good with customers. But in terms of financial modeling, in terms of technology, in terms of future proofing, in terms of site asset management, right? In terms of where you branch out, right? How do you control what you branch out? You're absolutely rubbish at that, right? So that is a discussion. Then you need to, it can't happen overnight. Iqbal, it cannot happen over time.
Oh, yes.
It took us 5 years.
If it's a family business, and I agree with you, it's not just in the Asian community. I mean, I remember watching Sir John Harvey Jones.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to love his programs.
Yeah.
And I used to see English businesses who were going through some similar pains.
Exactly.
So it's not unique to Asian businesses.
So there's another massive problem, though.
Yeah.
Right. So people like Amjad, who sat here and giving you this, right? Because there'll be one or two people who become the center of attraction. So Amjad turns up with his black tie at the dinners, right? At all these functions, right? So you get this profiling, you get this kudos of being a front man. But all of a sudden, when the consultants come in and they said, well, Amjad, I think it's time that you were no longer a managing director because you haven't got the skill sets to take a company from 25 to 150, 200, 300 million pounds. So unfortunately, you have to step aside. Now, so that is the logical thing that you need to do in business. But then it becomes, well, does Amjad really want to give that up? Does he want to give up being interviewed by you guys because he's successful? Or does he not want to be the president of this, that, and the other? Right? So I think this journey, right, is a painful one. But those people who take that journey logically and have a really good conversation, right, within the family members and sit down and say, look, for what's happening in the next 10 years. So what we did...
As I say, they don't have a business plan.
Well, no, exactly.
90% of them don't have a business plan, probably even 95%. So there's no strategic thinking about where we are today, where do you want to go, and how are you going to get there? What's that journey going to look like? And what do we need to do to move from where we want to be?
Well, the classic case here is, right, as you grow, because you know every nook and cranny of your business, yeah? So what you tend to do, and a lot of people listening to this who run businesses, right, will empathize. They'll say, yeah, I can get this, is that you hire somebody to do a particular job, right, and then you butt in. As they're doing the job, you say, you're not doing this right. They're serving a customer, and you'll say, you know what, you don't do it like this, in front of the customer. So what have you done? You've actually belittled, right, the person that you've employed, right, just to show, right, that you know better, right. So I think what I'm saying to you is this journey needs to be really planned, right, and it's all about succession planning, right. So is it about the status of running a business and building a dynasty, or is it about building a business that actually delivers economic prosperity for the family, not just for me, but for the coming generation and the people that you employ, and how they move up the ladder and that fulfillment happens.
I mean, coming back, I know you wanted to come and ask something.
I did. I mean, one of the things he said is why pay for education, and the answer would be like, you know, just wait for the bill of ignorance. But looking on that and what we touched upon earlier on, is, you know, when you came, the harmony, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the helping out, no background, no this, no that, no anything else. But currently, as it stands, I'm not wanting you to take a walk in the past, or I want currently, you know, Yorkshire or Bradford and places like Dewsbury and other places, you know, you got deprivation of health, deprivation of education, highest number of abortion rates, crime, drugs, you name it, what's going on. And yourself being a successful businessman and many others like you, what would you say to...
I was going to touch that in the second part of the program.
All right, okay.
Obviously, you know, we've seen the success now. There's two elements I want to talk to Amjad about. That was one of them. How can businesses help? I mean, Amjad's right. You know, we had this hiatus as a community. You know, we came here to work. Our fathers came here to work. They worked damned hard. They actually saved the economy of this country.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You know, they saved the mills, the engineering company, the the foundries, as well as, you know, the infrastructure of this country. And our generation, our successful succession should have been, our falling generation should have been much more productive, and much more successful. However, we've regressed in some cases.
Okay, I'll tell you where the problem lies, right? So the first generation, I remember in the 70s being in a house on Lum Lane with probably 20 young people who'd come over from Pakistan, Bangladesh, all over, living together. And you talked about camaraderie, about brotherhood, whether you were from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, you know, you were there in that house, and whatever help and support you needed, right, you were given that, right. And if you wanted to read namaz, or if you wanted to create a place of worship, everybody went there, right, whether you were Salfi, Brailwi, it really did not matter. And I'm not making this up. So people of my generation, right, will absolutely believe this. But somewhere along the line, we've got, you know, yellow hearts, brown hearts, you know, green hearts, white hearts. My Islam is better than yours. Now, I'm not knocking those people at all. I think what I'm saying to you, right, we have numbers, in terms of we're probably 4 million Muslims living in UK, right, and we have individually, right, it's like the Pakistani team, you know, individually they're brilliant, and sometimes when they act as a team, they're the world, you know, they'll beat everybody, right. So individually we have pieces of gem in health, in education, in business, in law, across UK, across Europe, across the world.
Totally agree with you.
Right? But where's the golden thread, right, which creates that masterful jewelry that says this is the Muslim Ummah, and this is, you know, how we need to,
and binds people together.
Binds together. And
now we need to go to a break, I've been told.
Okay.
I think that's a fantastic point to actually. It's unfortunate we have to go to a break. We're going to have to go to the break, and then we can come back and pick up. This goes back to the point of how does the business community help shape the future economic direction of this region, because I think they have an important role to play. So I think we're ready for a break. I've been told we're ready for a break, so we're going to go for the break. Viewers, I hope you found this discussion so far interesting and illuminating, and I'm sure the next part will be equally so as well. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Don't go away from us.